The challenge of politics in our generation, in the next 5 years or 10 years, is to find that consensus and to hold that middle ground. The weight of 1,000 jobs is often on our minds. So this is not just about being able to make policies at the national level anymore. It's about what it means to people and what it means to their families. Specific to maybe my experience, what it means to them through businesses and through their jobs. The success of Skills Future, including the new full-time training allowance, which is a few thousand a month, also meets that same outcome that we want, right? Which is to provide the assurance that if you fall into unemployment, you have the support you need to provide for your family. Unemployment insurance is one means to an end. It's not the only means. There are many things that we should not be content about. We should continue to strive for improvement, continue to make sure that we can make our policies more suited for that new environment. The more unequal the trend is for society, the more there is a need, in general terms, for the state to come in. We're not done anywhere building Singapore.
Welcome back to Chills with TFC. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and today is a special episode because it's my first political interview, At first, I didn't want to do these things, but when I started to see more and more podcasts doing it, and then I'm like, oh my God, they're doing it in such a horrible way. I hate it. So I want to make this platform the platform where we discuss issues, where we discuss ideas, and move on from there. Hopefully, more will come, right? And I'm very glad to be in studio with Shawn, right?
Oh, thank you, Reggie.
Yes, our potential candidate, have you announced your candidacy?
Soon. All in due time.
All in due time.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes. So for our audience that don't know you, maybe you can introduce a little bit more about yourself beyond what we can read on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
These days, everyone is reading your profiles already.
So first and foremost, I'm Shawn Loh. If you see my LinkedIn profile, the first thing that jumps up at you is that I'm in my 30s and I'm a young father of 4 kids. And all my kids are below the age of 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
The hustle is real.
The hustle is real. That's the only thing that people remember about me. In terms of why I'm here, the first thing that I would say is that I believe, and I have skin in the game because I have 4 children, I believe that our best days must be ahead of us. And the only way for our best days to be ahead of us is if competent and credible candidates step forward to serve in politics. And hopefully I can make a contribution to Parliament and to the residents where I'm serving by being that competent and credible candidate. So as you said, Reggie, I have some background in the civil service, most recently in MOF as the budget director. Before that, I was also in the private sector, and now I'm back in the private sector, leading the same company that I helped navigate through COVID. So that's quite meaningful as well. And I think that's something that can hopefully make me a better candidate and hopefully a better MP.
So that's the coyote the party sold you. When they try to recruit you, say, Shawn, good people must run for politics. Is that what is sold to you?
That is part of, I think, what they said to me. It's the part that stuck.
Okay.
Because I tell everyone, I was living my best life as a civil servant. I was making big impact. I was taking care of my family. I was helping others. And there was no reason for me to leave. And one of the critical arguments that not just the party said, but actually those around me said, was that there was a duty to serve. And the reason is stewardship. That if you want future civil servants to also be able to make such a good impact, to be able to work with the government of the day, it's important that good and credible candidates step up for politics. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
I mean, you do have a front seat in a lot of the bureaucracy, what people will call the bureaucracy already, right? So in that sense, you already have been doing all the impact that you could have already done a lot, in the public service, and then you choose to do this, right? So, okay, but you're not the first of, your kind. Now, to be fair, there are many people in front of you that have done something like that. Maybe give me a bit of idea, right? Like with that as a backdrop, I know most people at a certain level would seek higher aspirations, fulfillment, like actualization, all those type of stuff, right? That's kind of where a lot of the narratives of like your duty, all that start to come in, right? But why do you then join politics then?
That's right. So Reggie, at the start of your question, you talked about purpose.
Yeah.
Right? You talked about the hierarchy of needs, and you talked about, discovering your passion and all that. So to me, politics is a calling, not a career. The difference is that a career is something where, you have a certain aspirational endpoint. a lot of your listeners are those who want to retire early, right? So there's a certain aspirational endpoint. Maybe it's an age, maybe it's a position and all, and that's a career. But politics is a calling. And for callings, it's about, first, you have to say yes. You should answer the call. You should discover your purpose. If your purpose is to live a life for others, then that's what gives you the meaning to wake up every day. I think FIRE is good, but incomplete. And I'll submit that after you retire, whether you retire early or retire, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with the next decade, few decades of your life? And so I want to complete your acronym. I want to say that you should be fired up. Okay? Fired up. And what does that stand for? So financial independence, retire early if you want. Okay? But DUP, deliver on your purpose.
Okay, this one I can give you.
Deliver on your purpose. Fired up. Or fired up. Okay? So that's something that I guess I was quite clear that's what I wanted to do. I'm not retiring early per se, but I'm definitely discovering and delivering on my purpose.
It'd be a bit concerned if you're retiring early in politics.
Well,
you're throwing yourself into the ring of fire, you know.
Yeah, you never know.
Then what is your purpose? And like in terms of, you did say it's about serving the people and all that, but everybody say it's about serving the people, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very boring.
that is the correct thing to say if you want to run for election. But how does that translate? You know, yeah. Give me a bit idea.
I see it as my life's goal to maximize my impact on others. It's almost like a blessing to me that I have some opportunities to have these experiences, both as a policymaker and now in business. And you need both to make the best decisions for our country. The idea is that for our country to do its best, for our best days to be ahead of us, we need the best ideas to be generated in different forums, over podcasts and all the way to Parliament. And we need competent and credible people to propose those ideas, to understand whether they're feasible or not, and then to make those decisions to carry the country forward.
Yeah.
And I've had opportunity, as you said, to do it in the government, in the civil service, through many different ministries. And now I think maybe there's some additional value I can add, contributing those ideas as an MP.
I understand, right? I don't think anybody questions the idea of purpose or serving the people and all that, right? So, but same with how, you can say, what you want, but also like kind of you got to substantiate yourself, right? Like in already a position, with so much control of, a lot of things, what have you done then to validate that, you really want to serve the people,
I feel very strongly that work-life balance and work-life practices are very important. Things to do with young families, childcare and all. Things to do with work-life are very personal to me. And I think that's part of having a supportive environment for young families.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of business, since I'm also now part of the private sector in a medium-sized local company, there is a sense that the next 5 years economically will not be as smooth as maybe the last 2 or 3 years. After we got out of COVID, the economy really bounced back. I was in the Economic Development Board at that time, and we were seeing like interest from investors coming in, setting up new businesses, new factories and all. It's not clear what the next 3 to 5 years will be. From a business perspective, that's definitely something that many are concerned about. And ultimately, businesses are the conduit to provide those jobs. And we have 1,000 workers with us. So that's always top of mind. So having that additional perspective, I think it's important, and I hope to bring that to the fore.
I wanted to push it a little bit more to look at the tangible aspects of things, right? Okay, so to be fair, solutioning is actually not that difficult as long as you can define the problem properly, right? At least that's my point of view, right? So defining the problem is the hard part, right? When you say things like work-life balance, right? Nobody would dispute the idea of it, or I think today you can even call it a moral high ground, right? Like if you come out and say we're not for work-life balance, I think out you go, you pass it already. So I would say people already can accept that work-life balance is a thing, and it has won the world of ideas, right? But how does it translate that into actionable policies? What does it mean, when you say like work-life balance, what do you want to champion? How does that look like?
I like how you put it that way. I strongly believe that you need 2 things, right? You need the policies to be right, but you also need the politics to be right. And a lot of our challenges ahead are about getting the politics right. What do I mean by this? So I mean finding out how to get that middle ground, to get that consensus, to agree to the statement you just mentioned. So for example, you said that work-life balance is quite accepted and people generally think that that's a moral high ground. I'm not too sure. I think it depends on who you ask, and I think in some instances, in some businesses, and most certainly in this area where we're recording this podcast, you will not find many people that agree. Yeah. So and that's the challenge of politics. The challenge of politics in our generation in the next 5 years or 10 years is to find that consensus and to hold that middle ground. And I think it's tougher than we imagine. Now, as a civil servant, you're right that once you define the problem sufficiently clearly,
clarity,
the solution often presents itself. But the solution has to be something that people can accept. And now, increasingly so, it's about convincing people that this is the correct solution for them. In all policies, frequently there are winners and there are losers. And the challenge of politics and challenge of our generation is to make sure that we explain it well and we convince people, even those who may not be the beneficiaries of certain policies. Maybe if I can explain a bit more, like even now we talk about support for families and all that. There are many Singaporeans now who don't have children, either by choice and many not because of their choice. And we must also be mindful of how we communicate pro-family policies socially or politically. We also should provide for other family archetypes, and I think that's quite important.
So that means you're gonna
some people
allow...
want to be parents, right? Some people want to be parents, and
I know. That day someone just So we were just talking about like if one of your pets pass away, like are you gonna get leave, like compassionate leave, So that is a debate that will happen in the internet in due course.
It's happening now. It's happening now.
Yeah.
In the organizations I've been in, every year we have like town halls and all, and inexorably there's one or two questions that can we have pet care leave, and it is not something that I think it's too far-fetched that we should not appreciate the sentiment behind it, because if you are very tied to a pet for a good 10, 15 years, right? That's something that you've built an attachment to emotionally. When that pet passes on, a part of you also dies.
I get it. And so, just to be clear, I'm not against it. We can have a good discussion. Don't cancel me.
And I've seen many...
The pet community quite intense.
I've seen many residents nowadays also bringing pets around and all. So I do think it's a
for sure,
interesting
it's quite cute.
trend.
I was at the Holland VE there. There were a lot of cute little pets there.
The one where the pets can go through.
Yeah. So that was nice. So I get it, right? So not against that, right? But on the part where you say like, okay, so family, you want to cater to essentially more types of families, right? Essentially on like parents or even like singles, and all that. From that ground, right, what does that mean? Like, how does that mean in terms of building a Singapore that's catered to a more diverse definition of family?
Depends on the needs of each community. If you're talking about like localized needs, it could manifest itself in different ways, right? So where I've been to, you see a lot of playgrounds popping up. You see a lot of childcare facilities popping up. At the same time, you may need not say a pet playground, but like a dog run and all. So there are different ways in which we have a limited amount of space, a limited amount of infrastructure, and we just need to be mindful that we want to take care of different communities who are all living together and all. Yeah. Ultimately, that's the challenge of being an MP. So one of my reflections, having recently resigned from the civil service, is that there are national level policies. There are national level things that you can do. But that last mile of service delivery, that last mile of making an impact to a person can only be done at the local level. Because the national policy would say, everyone who lives in this certain flat type will receive this amount of benefits. But all those who live in that flat type may have different needs. Some may actually have a lot more needs than those who live in smaller flats, for example. But you don't know. At the national level, you can't know because you're dealing with averages and medians. The only people who know are those who are in the community. And that's where that last mile of touch points, I think, really matters.
So I don't think people disagree with that. Ultimately, it's about your platform, right? Like, what do you stand for? Because there is the party politics, right? And then there is the Shawn politics, Because if you are just another one of the party members, then you are not attractive to the...
you're vanilla.
You're vanilla.
Candidate,
You'll be a backbencher.
Even like you wear white and all that.
Yeah. But I think the broader public can also comfortably agree with me that there are many people that you don't even remember the name, right? So they can run 2 elections. It's like, hey, who's this person? Right? So I don't think that is what you want, or that's what the people that are doing well in their career want, because you are sacrificing a lot. You are now putting your name into the ring of fire, and then people check your background. You know what I mean? People will check your background. They will gossip about you. Suddenly, your kids, your wife, they all may become things that people dig into and talk about. So in that narrative, you must have something that you want to push, which you have shared a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to go a little bit more on that front. So what is your platform?
Maybe I can add a bit more color to that. I'm part of the new generation, right? I'm part of the generation in their 30s who for the first time in their lives is stepping forward in politics. This is most certainly nerve-wracking for us, for me for sure.
I'm sure.
Right? You spoke about cost, Veggie. I see it in terms of cost and benefit. Yes, there are costs and there are sacrifices that need to be made. I'm very focused on that benefit, right? The privilege to potentially, if elected, be part of that national conversation, be part of the body that decides on which policies are good and which policies are maybe not the right time to get the country to the next stage. I mentioned a bit more about this idea of competence and credibility. I think it's important for people who have done reasonably well in their jobs, who can contribute their ideas at the national level to step forward. That's something that may be a bit more unique to me, because not only do I have policy-making experience, I also have business experience.
That's true.
Profit and loss responsibilities. The weight of 1,000 jobs is often on our minds. So this is not just about being able to make policies at the national level anymore. It's about what it means to people and what it means to their families.
Yeah.
And specific to maybe my experience, what it means to them through businesses and through their jobs. The next 2 or 3 years, I don't know how it will turn out. I think all businesses are understandably worried.
I'm sure.
I mean, the trade wars are really all over the world. It could work out well if the right policies are in place to support businesses, to ensure that workers are in jobs that pay better each year. And if that's the statement, from an economic policy perspective, that's what we're trying to do. It's easier said than done.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I've been at the Economic Development Board where you try to convince companies to set up businesses here and create jobs. And many times, I would say even maybe half the time, you get the door slammed in your face. Because this is not the cheapest place to do business.
Tell me about it.
Right? I mean, you rent a space here. You have to hire a team and all. So this is not the cheapest place to do business. It may not always provide the best value, but one part of our value is the stability and credibility of a strong government. And I wouldn't discount that. I wouldn't discount that. If you talk to businessmen, why are they here? Why are they still ensuring that their businesses are functioning in Singapore? It's because they know that the policy now, 3 years' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, has a certain direction to it. Doesn't change by much, but has a certain direction to it. And they can then make business decisions using that time frame.
I think that's a fair statement. And then to be fair, I don't think Singaporeans also want things to always change, right? It's a mark of a problematic government. A good government must plan ahead. And recently we covered the budget, and then one of my guys were like, "Hey, why no update on CPF?" Like, every year also CPF. That this is a problem. The policies need to have gestation period. There must be long term plan. And I think our corner of the internet understands this thing, right?
I'm glad you talk about CPF because I spent 3 years on CPF policies. Those were one of my, I think, most meaningful stints as a former civil servant. Because that was a time in which CPF policies were not the most popular policies in government. There was a need to provide some flexibility, understandably so, because there were many Singaporeans that had legitimate needs before they reached, I think, 65. We managed to push through a whole range of reforms. That was also the time.
Actually,
and
can you give us some color
Yeah.
on the reforms that you managed to push through?
Managed to make the CPF a bit more flexible, so everyone could withdraw a certain proportion of their savings. I think one big part for me that was recommended, and I think they're still studying it, was the introduction of low-cost investment funds. And I think a lot of your listeners
they will love it. Yeah, yeah.
are very interested in it because
yeah.
one part of this corner of the internet feels very strongly that low-cost passive investing, sometimes through robo-advisors, is one way to earn a good return and to FIRE. So that was
I sense
a good
apprehension.
time.
Of course, because there's assumption in all investment theses. But yes, please continue.
It was during that time, and I take no credit for this, it was during that time where we also introduced new schemes like the Silver Support Scheme, which took care of the seniors who may not have saved up enough for their retirement before that. And that was a very meaningful scheme for me. I don't take any credit for that, but it was during that time. And till now, it's one of the papers that I always enjoy looking back on, because when I wrote that cabinet memo, it committed the government to a certain expenditure per year, which has only grown as our population gets older. And it allows us to then provide that level of assurance to a good number of seniors. So that was very meaningful.
I think on the note of CPF, right, there's been all the updates, right? Like CPF Life, MediShield Life. Last time MediShield never cover everything, like pre-existing condition, and MediShield Life covers pre-existing condition, but there are also other problems that continue, right? So I would argue that CPF Life and MediShield Life, these are great, updates as compared to a decade plus ago. People are very, very annoyed with CPF. I think that the things have updated itself, and I would say the word on the ground has shifted. People,
you think so?
I would think so.
I'm glad to hear that.
I would think
I'm
so.
glad to hear that.
And it's not a pure messaging thing. It is actual change, recognizing the need of the people. And then I think sentiments moved over time, right? And with CPF Life, with MediShield Life. I think with CPF Life is the best annuity program out there in the market because it's nationally run, right?
Yes.
And MediShield Life, of course, is the cheapest because it's nationally run, right? So there are all these...
Not just nationally run. The reason why it's the cheapest is also because the CPF board doesn't make an additional profit on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's completely risk pooled across the whole population. So you have the best pool in terms of risk pooling. You have the lowest overheads. Because you also don't make a profit. And you distribute the bonuses as surpluses as well. So from an annuity design perspective, it's very efficient.
For sure. And there's no debate in that. Even the industry knows, right? That's why nobody sells any private annuity program anymore.
On top of it.
Right? There's some things at the top because you can only... there's a max cap as to what you can use with CPF Life, right?
MediShield Life has an additional benefit, which is that before that, I'm not an expert, I don't claim to be an expert, but before that, if you had pre-existing conditions, you were not covered. And you have no assurance, right? If you get hospitalized because of the pre-existing condition, then how? At least now there's that blanket assurance at a certain level that even if you have pre-existing conditions, you can be covered.
Hey, welcome to the Financial Coconut Podcast Network. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut. And if you're loving what we're creating here, like, share, subscribe, share with your loved ones, comment in the comment section below. And we'll see you for great content on Chills with TFC. I think it's great. National run healthcare ecosystems and national run insurance systems have been long proven to be, good. Right, I think in the grand scheme of things, right? So then the question would then be like, why not go further, right? I think amongst the working professionals, there's this whole part about integrated shield plan, and premiums essentially like, wow, cannot arrest, this premiums just rising and rising and rising. At the integrated shield plan level, which is built on MediShield. So not MediShield's problem, but is the private insurer mechanics at the top, right? And then there's also the other part about unemployment insurance, right? Because we already have a relatively robust ecosystem in running national schemes. It is not too different from just open another product. Of course, there's some the definition in the product and all that, but it's like how NLB already has a whole way of lending books out and come back. You can lend cameras, you can lend other things, right? Like there's a system infrastructure that's been set up. So back on the national run schemes, right? National insurance schemes, like what is your take on like unemployment insurance and actually beefing up another tier on top of MediShield to essentially also, provide that so-called slightly more atas
I
care that
see.
the you know the working professionals would love. They would love their B1. You know they
The A class,
yeah,
no what's it called? No deductible.
yeah. Maybe
and
not
all.
A lah. Maybe not A. That A is
Okay.
a bit of a stretch, but the
Yeah.
B1s, you know, those things. I know it's dynamic. You know, it's complicated. But want to hear your view on these two things: unemployment insurance and the additional on MediSave on top of that, and MediShield on top.
I must say that I don't know too much about integrated shield plans, and I probably have more to learn from you and from this corner of the internet about that. I can only say that it would probably depend on the pricing of these plans, because the larger the coverage, the greater the cost to the individual anyway.
Of course.
And then the market could very well unravel itself. You also want to be a bit concerned about incentive design, which is the policymaker and me talking
Of
about,
course,
right?
of
So
course.
when we
I can
debate
sense it. I can sense
I'm
it.
very interested to talk about this. And in fact, in Parliament, if I get the chance, I also want to talk about this because it's about incentive design. It's about making the right policies. It's not just about an idea, but actually how feasible is it? And what are the drawbacks and the second, third order costs associated? So for integrated shield plans or anything that's higher tier, it's about incentive design. How do you prevent people from over-consuming? And if you over-consume, there are second and third order effects, because then it increases prices across the whole healthcare market, and then everyone, including those who are covered by basic insurance, may end up being affected. That one I don't really know, but I suspect that that's a second or third order effect.
I'm sure there's some element of that. Yeah. We had an episode. I'm not sure will it come out before or after that. Yeah, we had the president of the Singapore Actuarial Society break down the numbers and share with us some of those
He's the
things.
expert. I must watch.
Yeah,
I must watch that podcast.
You must watch.
Please send me.
Yes. I will send you. Yeah. But on unemployment.
So unemployment insurance, I know many people, parties, academics have mooted it. First and foremost, let me start by saying that I believe all ideas should be debated and on their own merits. I'm for one, am not the type of person who dismisses ideas depending on who says it. I don't dismiss ideas based on who says it. I think it's important to look at the idea and to look at what it's trying to solve and whether that is the best way to solve it.
For sure.
And whoever has suggested unemployment insurance in the past, I do think that they come from a good place. They come from a well-intentioned desire to ensure that those who may fall in unemployment will receive the support they need. Because economically, it's not always the best case to fall into unemployment and get the first job that you get, right? Sometimes it's better to spend some time, retrain and all that.
I think most of the time it's better.
Yeah.
They don't rush into the next job. And I think some of the policies have shown itself to suggest, that this has become, factored in, like Skills Future, and not just the basic Skills Future program, but there's the whole level up, $3,000 thing that should be quite popular. I'm not sure how it rolls out yet, but I think that is a very clear signal that, you shouldn't be getting the immediate next thing, you want to end up in the platform work immediately. And it's a little bit of a privilege to say you don't need to latch on the next thing, but I think as the state you want to have, so that people don't need to end up in what I think academics will call underemployment, right? You want to be gainfully employed. Yeah.
And in fact, that's a great way to actually answer the question, because the success of Skills Future, including the new full-time training allowance, which is a few thousand a month, also meets that same outcome that we want, right? Which is to provide the assurance that if you fall into unemployment, and if you're looking for the next job to go into, you have the support you need to provide for your family. Unemployment insurance is one means to an end. It's not the only means by any measure. And whether or not that idea has any traction, I suspect depends a lot on how well other measures like Skills Future, Level Up Program, which has just been implemented this year, how it performs. And of course, from an implementation perspective, you can go on and on about how do you price unemployment insurance, because in different market conditions, you have to think about what's the optimum price for different types of employees in different jobs which have different risk profiles who need to pay. So it's not like a flat payout, a flat payment, like how I think other types of risk pooling schemes may work.
Yeah.
So these are all the considerations to have. But the intent is important. And I think the intent behind someone saying that we need unemployment insurance, if the intent is to provide the assurance to all Singaporeans that you are supported even if you fall into unemployment, that's good intent. And that's something that I definitely agree with.
I'm not sure because I'm not in everybody's head, but I think that is across the board the intent, right?
It comes from a good place.
Yeah, it comes from a good place.
It comes from a good place.
So and this is what I like, right? Because I think it's it's a bit annoying when people start labeling each other and call each other names,
Yes,
just to
yeah.
avoid a good discussion, right? And I do think all parties come with that. Maybe not all. I cannot say for all, but when I listen to a lot of the speeches, I think people genuinely care, right? And you can debate about the merits of the policy, right? So just to sum up that view, essentially at this point in time, your party, which forms the government, has chosen not to do the unemployment scheme and instead do some of these other more like payouts, I cannot say payouts, like training
It
schemes,
is a training allowance.
training allowance, that is a bit more narrowly organized than a national unemployment scheme. You would say a lot because of all the complexities. Is that a
That's one way
administrative
to think
problems?
about it. Also, I mean, the Skills Future Level Up program is a tax-funded scheme.
Yeah.
When schemes are tax-funded, it means the whole country contributes.
Of course,
essentially.
Yeah,
conceptually, right?
Yeah, conceptually.
So the Skills Future Level Up program, where you pay a certain training allowance for those who are training to find the next job, that is tax-funded.
Okay.
And tax collection is an easy way in which you pool resources together to support a certain policy objective.
Yeah.
But I fully agree. So I like this idea where we are talking about ideas, even talking about people behind the ideas. That's very important to me. And I mean, if I have a chance to be in Parliament, I hope to discuss and debate those ideas, regardless of who comes up with those ideas. So if it's a PAP MP or if it's a MP from another party, I hope to be the one to see the idea on its own merit and to be able to debate it.
And I hope words like populist never come out from your mouth.
Oh.
So populist. I mean, the other side will call elites, right? I mean, it's all under the same vein. It's just two steps away from from discrediting an individual without engaging in the debate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So I hope that doesn't come out from you. And I think
that's
you
my
made
assurance.
a commitment.
Yeah,
to
that's
that.
my assurance. So please hold me to that.
Yeah.
Please hold me to that.
I will text you. Hey, Shawn, I saw you.
Yeah. If ever I do that, you must keep me honest. You must keep me honest because I don't want to lose myself in politics.
Fair.
And I want to talk about the ideas. And Parliament is one platform. I think podcasts like these are an important platform for us to discuss ideas.
Yeah, for sure. So if we push that discussion further down into things like minimum wage, right? Because I think as much as I think for a lot of our audience, they do not work in minimum wage jobs. The truth of the matter is, once you have a pseudo wage floor or some sort, it actually affects the overall labor market. I think it's very well defined, right? So I think this is one part where your party has chose not
taken
to
a view, right?
Has taken a view, chose not to set a floor, but has done this whole progressive wage model thing, and some academics will say, oh yeah, essentially that's a effective minimum wage, right?
For that sector.
Yeah. So just want to hear, your point of view on
Yes.
like minimum wage, and this position and like, what is your take on the overall thing?
I think first and foremost, it comes from a good place. As I said, the first thing you need to understand is, does it come from a good place, right? What are you trying to do? The ideas behind a minimum wage, a national minimum wage, is the idea that you want to uplift the lowest wage workers to a higher level. Empirically speaking, that has been the case for the last, I don't know how many years, right? So the bottom 20% in terms of wages has risen faster than the median. So that's empirics.
Which is true. We did we did study, we did look at the MOM report. Check out the Instagram. Yes.
Don't take it from me.
Yeah,
take it from Reggie. Take it from the financial coconut.
And he never fluff it's true. The data, at least the data, shows. And if you want to question the data, okay, you can do what you need to do.
Yes.
But yes.
And now I'm in a private sector. I'm in a company that actually runs and operates F&B businesses. So we are also affected by the progressive wage model, which in some form or other is really characterized as a minimum wage for that sector. I think the test of the idea is whether it works in different economic conditions. We have been in a certain economic condition for a long time where the labor market is tight, which means there are more firms that want to employ people than potentially job seekers. And so when the labor market is tight, it's easy to have wages that rise, and it's easy to be able to justify ideas like a minimum wage, whether it's for a sector or not. I want to share a story with you, Reggie, because this is something that really happened, I think just last weekend, where I was speaking to another F&B business owner who also has a social purpose. So he's also affected by what is effectively his minimum wage, right, for the sector. And he said, Shawn, I want to hire workers that may not be so productive. I want to hire workers that, maybe can only have 50% of the output. But I'm not allowed to pay them 50% of their wage. and therefore I can't hire them. It's not commercially viable to hire them, and so they don't get hired. And that's one small example that if you scale it up to a national minimum wage scheme, you might see a lot of these conversations being had. It doesn't matter so much if the labor market remains tight, but keep in mind that in the next 5 years, we might be on the cusp of an economic recession. And when that happens, the people who lose out are those workers who are marginally less productive. These could be workers who are maybe senior workers. These could be workers with disabilities and all. And it is at that margin that I would be concerned about. But I would definitely agree with the concept and the outcome that we want, which is we want to increase wages faster at the bottom 10 and the bottom 20% so that all Singaporeans benefit from the fruits of economic progress.
Of course, important. And of course, because although inflation rate has come down, the new equilibrium of prices is already there. So you do want that wage growth to kind of catch up and manage that gap, right? I mean, the middle class or the working professional had experienced negative wage growth in the past 5 years, and hopefully going forward it changes. This is also under the MOM report, right?
I'm not sure whether it's past 5 years, but I think there was 1 or 2 years
I think it was
there was negative wage growth.
There was negative wage growth, especially amongst the middle class. So going forward, I think that's what everybody wants to do. You can quibble about the method, but I don't think either sides are too far from what they're trying to do.
Which is good. So, we are all aligned in terms of that values, right?
Yeah, for sure. That is cool. But I want to push you on this idea of then CPF contribution, right? Because your party has famously reduced CPF contribution rates, when things are not going so well in the labor market, seeking to promote employment, making it lighter on the employers,
on the businesses,
on the businesses,
right? Yes.
so that they will hold on to it, right? In all totality, actually, it essentially is a short-term cut. It has long-term ripple effects, especially for the working professionals. And as you want to develop CPF as a rigorous retirement system, contribution rates matter. That's why the party also raised the contribution rate to
for older workers also.
Yeah, for older workers, and I think it's $8,000 qualifying, for CPF. So so everything has kind of moved in that direction, reinforcing CPF's central role as the retirement scheme of the nation, right? And so my question to you is, if today your party during bad times comes out and say that, we want to reduce the CPF contribution rate for a while, or like for whatever, how would you react to that? What is a potential speech that I can hear from Shawn in Parliament?
You can definitely hear a speech from me because I have views on the CPF. Every time the CPF is mentioned, and I get a bit triggered because I love talking about it.
It's your thing.
It's one of the things that I really like to engage with. I might be getting my policy history wrong, but I think the last time the government took a big cut in the CPF rates was in the 1980s.
Yes.
During the oil crisis and when we had very big recessionary concerns. Yeah. Since then, there are other ways in which you can help businesses cope with business costs while still keeping workers employed.
Okay.
A great example of this is through a couple of the episodes of economic volatility that we had in more recent history than the 1980s, where through the job support scheme, I believe, and the job credit scheme, the government subsidizes some of the wage costs. Structurally, that makes a lot more sense because then you can do that for a time-limited period. And then when the economy does better and businesses recover, you can then pull that back. I think that is another way in which recently the government has done it. So there are different ways to get the same end, right? Ultimately, what's the end again? The end is to ensure that businesses have costs that are managed.
Okay, fair.
And there are ways to do it. You can cut the CPF contribution rate, which is one contributor to business costs, but there are others.
Okay.
And I think in more recent history, the government has decided to do the other approaches.
Okay, so in time to come, we hope the more advanced or the newer style approaches will continue, essentially, right? So, but it remains to be seen until the situation actually arises. Okay, but that's your point of view. Okay, great. Then maybe one other important question that people...
Go ahead. I'm enjoying this discussion a lot, Reggie, because very seldom do we get the chance to talk. I feel like I'm talking to a civil servant now.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe one day, yes. But I think not too long ago, Professor Teo Yo Yen, right, and Kok Ho, then Professor Ng Kok Ho. I know since I call Yo Yen Professor, I should call Kok Ho Professor. Yeah. So they published the minimum income standards, right, and we read their stuff. We had them on the show. There was a whole discussion. And from that, as a minimum income standard, they published the numbers that they think is a minimum income standard, right? Immediately, the other ministries came out. I'm not sure if the Ministry of Finance was one of it. I think MOF,
I think MSF
MOM,
may have
MSF,
come up with something.
I can't remember. There were 3 ministries that came out and do a public statement that say I paraphrase, the general idea is they do not totally agree with the research, right? So there are certain things that they don't think should be included. Okay. So
what's an example?
I think one was perfume, then got boba tea, then got travel, some of those things.
Okay.
When the profs came, they did clarify that when they say travel, it's not to Paris, it's like maybe to JB, like maybe further, maybe Batam, and I think it's very fair. From my point of view, I think it's fair. I know even Lam Kyong don't think it's fair. But ex-GIC economist Lam Kyong.
Okay,
yeah. So he also don't think it's fair. But I think it's fair because Singapore is one red dot. You cannot be traveling to Tuas lamppost every day, right? Like
that's further than JB for some people.
Yeah. Oh yes, for sure. Tampines people, you don't want to go Tuas lamppost, right? But during COVID, no choice. Everybody do all sorts of weird things to stay sane, right? So
yeah, fair enough. So that was probably the most visited spot in Singapore at one time.
Exactly.
All the social media was all to us.
Yeah, and then there was this one tree somewhere behind the MC, also very popular. Yeah. So anyway, right? So people do all sorts of cute things to stay sane. But I think the idea is some of these so-called basic things are essentially how we define quality of life for Singaporeans. And would extend to discuss what is considered a good life. Right. So and these lines are important. How you define these things are important because then it affects all other policies, right? Because if internally we all agree that okay, these things are considered basic needs, minimum income standards, then whoever that is governing the day would then adjust policies to meet this consensus, right? I think it's a fair statement. So what is your take on this minimum income and then what is the good life, in your dictionary? So if you have some specific comment on this minimum income standards, that would be interesting. If not, what is the good life, for Singaporeans?
That's a very deep question that I'm going to take some time to get through. First, this idea of minimum income standards, Reggie. I think it's a great thing that we all disagree. It's a great thing that the agencies disagree with Prof. Teo, Yo Yan. It's a great thing that Yo Lam Kyong also disagrees with the agencies and with
Prof. Teo.
It's because it's in that area of disagreement that we can maybe find what are common values and common things that we can agree with.
Yeah.
If there's no disagreement, I will also find it a bit strange.
Yeah. No, then there's no discussion already because consensus has been reached. You know what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. I can't say I'm an authority over what should be a basic living standard. I do think that many people have different aspirations. I do want to say that it speaks to something deeper, which is a cost of living anxiety. Not least because you spoke about professionals, those who at least can earn an income. But I'm mindful that there's a group of a few 100,000 retirees that retired years ago. And if you retired 15 years ago, in the 2010s, you were experiencing 2% inflation. So even after 10 years, it's about maybe 22% increase in prices. But now you're shocked because the prices have increased significantly over a couple of years. And so I'm also mindful that when we say one of the solutions to the cost of living is increasing wages, that's one part of the equation, but not the full part. Because there are retired seniors who can't necessarily enjoy the fruits of economic growth in the future. And we should take care of them. So one thing that I found fulfilling was that, when we give support measures and all, even the SG60 vouchers, we give a bit more to our seniors. And we're mindful that they may not have the same runway to enjoy future employment with rising incomes. So always keep that in mind. I know a lot of our listeners are working professionals, but we also want to keep in mind how our policies affect those who are not in low-wage jobs, but in no-wage jobs, right? Or no more wage jobs because they're retired.
Yeah, they're retired.
Yeah, because they've retired already. And then to your point about the good life, I wouldn't say this is a political platform as it's a personal thing for me, and it's something I just discussed with some friends over the last few days. I think a good life and the measure of many people should be not just what they get, but what they give. I'm struck by the strength of our volunteers who come from all walks of life, but are so enthusiastic about giving back and giving to the person next door. Just this morning, there was a lady who fell in the market that I was visiting. And immediately, like 5-10 people from the hawker center came to say, hey, auntie, how are you? Can I call an ambulance? Can I do this? Can I do that? That doesn't cost anything. That doesn't take anything from anyone. But it shows a certain sense of community spiritedness. It shows a certain sense that people are concerned about giving as opposed to getting. And in the next phase, in our generation, Reggie, maybe in the past 10 years, we talk about multiple pathways of success, that, we are diversifying ways in which people can earn a good living and all. Maybe in the future, we should not talk about multiple pathways of just success. And I take no credit for this idea because a friend of mine discussed this with me. We should talk about multiple pathways of joy, happiness, and fulfillment, because success is still so narrowly defined. Right?
So you redefine the parameter by just changing the word, and then you can load it differently.
We defined it differently by saying that there's not just a single pathway to success, but now there's multiple pathways to success.
Okay.
But we are still fixated on what success means.
Yeah.
If we can then move in our generation to multiple pathways of joy and fulfillment, of which a large part should be giving back. Or giving to others, I think society will be much stronger for that.
Some people will say it's semantics, but I don't disagree with what you just said. Essentially, like, because success is so defined,
when
it's
you think about success,
very hard to redefine.
Yeah.
So might as well just throw the word away and then use some other things like joy, fulfillment, happiness, and it can kind of open up the conversation. I totally understand, right? And I don't think I am not a supporter of some of these ideas, but it bugs me a little bit when we do not then discuss how the market then interacts with these ideas, right? So it's like, okay, we tell our younger generation, do what you want, like fly, like explore, right? And like be fulfilled, have fun, all that. But at the core, they still need to pay the bills. You still need to get housing, cost of living is still a problem.
You still need to provide for your family.
You still need to provide for your family.
You need to provide for your children.
Right. So reconciling these two things is complicated. What do you think would be the role of the state then in reconciling these varied aspirations of the people? Like, you want to give them space, right, to do all these things. But then it cannot just, like, you probably wouldn't want people to just do that and then like don't care about the pragmatic elements. So where is that? Where is that space? You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying, Reggie. I think it may not need to be binary.
Of course.
So it's probably a spectrum, and everyone has to find their own place on that spectrum. And in different seasons of life, also your preferences change. Right now, I have 4 young kids. I think many people in my situation are thinking about how to do their best for the children, how to make sure that their education is good and proper. Different seasons of life, you find your equilibrium in different ways. You spoke about the market. To some extent, the market is a function of demand and supply. And demand need not necessarily be just so narrowly defined as demand for a high wage or high salary. It could be demand for a salary that can earn you a good living, take care of a family, plus do something else. So I've met quite a few people in the social sector, the philanthropy sector, and they've gone into that sector by choice. And they found their equilibrium across the spectrum so that they can also find a bit of balance between the different competing needs. A lot of our listeners here are trying to find that balance, trying to find that equilibrium. And it's probably dynamic. That means just because you find it doesn't mean it's the same one.
For sure. I don't dispute that. In fact, I think that is probably quite universal in terms of thought processes amongst a lot of the working professionals. It's dynamic, it's on a spectrum, you kind of find your balance. Sometimes you do this, then in a different season of life, you might want to do something else. And some people will say, oh, this is a privileged point of view. Okay, whatever, right? This corner of the internet has a certain type of listeners, right?
But I do also understand and acknowledge that some people may find it privileged.
Yeah. So okay, I get it. Okay, not dissing you. I get it. Okay, it is a privilege to be able to choose, like, do I want to work this job or I want to take a back seat because I've already accumulated enough to do something else that fulfills a different phase of life and all that. It is privilege. I can agree on that, right? I just want to participate in the dispute. But what I'm seeking is, where does the state come in, right? In terms of, like, let's say, to be more tangible, right?
Let's talk about an example.
Yeah, like
perhaps.
For example, let's say like the state provides 12-year public education, right? So when you provide 12-year public education where people pay nominal fees, and of course, I'm not discounting the people that cannot afford those fees. This is just one corner of the internet, right? So we speak to the working professionals because sometimes the comment section are a bit vibrant.
Oh, I see.
So I just want to clarify, okay? So back on the example, like, quote unquote, free education or heavily subsidized, public education. And I know there's been the whole push to try to also manage the early childhood space, in terms of cost and all that. And then there is the whole like healthcare cost, which has kind of gone through a few cycles. At first it was state-run, privatized, now kind of restructured, come back into a different. So it's kind of going through a cycle, right? And then of course there's housing, some of these things which fundamentally you cannot discount that the state participates, in them. And when the state takes on more of that, right, it actually opens up more space for the people to do other things. Or at least that's how it sits in my head lah. So that means if like today I can have like MediShield cover a lot of things, like MediShield Life cover a lot of things, then I don't need to sweat about it. There is high level of certainty when the state runs it, Where do you think the state comes in on this whole opening up ground for aspirations?
Yes, I'll be the first to admit that I don't think we're done moving in that direction.
Okay.
I don't think we're done providing a certain basic level of assurance for all Singaporeans so that they can achieve their aspirations. And that's because over time, our context will change. For example, wealth inequality is going to be a big thing in our generation. You alluded to that. I think as we try to lean against some unequal outcomes of society, we may not only be able to be content with just providing equality of opportunity without thinking about the outcomes. You spoke about fee-based education. I think we can do more for childcare, for example. Already childcare fees are not going up, they're going down. But can we do more? We probably can. As a parent, I find it quite upsetting that you see some of these child abuse cases in the paper sometimes. And that's because they didn't go to childcare. And if they went to childcare, maybe childcare did not have such a strong duty to report it.
There were also some childcares that had some saga, right?
That's why.
But that's a different
discussion. A quality issue. But some kids are just not going to childcare. And if they don't go to childcare, who's going to take care of the family? Who's going to look out for the child? Especially because children are very much innocent, right? So we are not done making the country a better place, which is why sometimes it motivates me also to offer myself for politics. If everything was so happy and everything was perfect, I think it's harder to join politics.
Why would you throw yourself into it, right? There must be a reason.
Yeah. So you can tell that, and I would be the first to say that there are many things that we should not be content about. We should continue to strive for improvement, continue to make sure that we can make our policies more suited for that new environment. And that's one example. So the more unequal the trend is for society, the more there is a need, in general terms, for the state to come in. That's my belief, and that's something that you probably hear me if I do make it to Parliament. You probably hear me say it quite a few times. We're not done anywhere building Singapore, I would say.
I definitely have a lot of questions more, but I think
we must have a part 2.
Yeah. Maybe after you join, and then 3 months in, I will fact check on like, how many speeches has Shawn made? All that.
Yes.
Right.
Please keep me honest. Please keep me honest.
And then we can continue from there. But
please keep the debate on ideas going, not just yourself, but your listeners and those who are in the comments section, because that's how we find the best ideas for Singapore.
Maybe in closing, are there any last things you want the audience to know other than vote for you? You run for each election, of course, ask people vote for you. Right? Yeah. So any last things?
I think I just want to say that it's important not just to think about ourselves and our families, but also what we can do for the broader community and the broader country. That's why I'm here offering myself up, stepping forward for politics. I started maybe earlier in this podcast to talk about expanding the acronym FIRE to
Fired up, right?
Fired up.
Yeah.
And I mean, it is my sincere hope that all our listeners can be fired up. Can be fired up, don't see retirement or retiring early as the end, but DUP, right? Where you is your. So deliver on your purpose. Find that purpose and deliver on it. And I think we'll all be better off if everyone does that.
I hope that's your campaign. The campaign slogan.
I'm still thinking about it, so maybe...
We'll see. So thank you for your time, thank you. I appreciate, y'all for tuning in, and I really like this discussion, to be very clear, and I hope more other candidates will offer themselves up on the show after this airs. People know, because, no amount of, MBTI or guitar playing is going to swing the educated voter, in my point of view, right? So we want this type of debates, and I want to hold that space for you. So if you are running, email us, hello@thefinancialcoconut.com, and we'll have you on the show to the max of our capability because we don't have a lot of time and a lot of resources to do a lot. But yes,
then thank you for having me as the first.
Thank you. You're lucky, right? Because of the MOF thing. But it was a great discussion. So thank you. I wish you well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so see y'all the next episode. Bye.
Bye.